Welcome to In All Honesty, the podcast where we get real about life and all the problems that come with it. I'm Michelle Elman, and I'm that friend who we all know is a little bit too honest. You might not come to me when you get back together with your ex, but I'll be there for you when it all goes tits up. Welcome back to In All Honesty, and this week's co-host I am so excited for. She is a podcast queen, Shivani.
Hello.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh my God, no. I hate it when people do this. And I do this to all my guests. I'm like, introduce yourself. How do people describe you? And then when people ask me, I'm like, oh God, the worst question.
Really? I'd much rather introduce myself than someone else introduce me. Yeah.
Oh no, I love the long list of accolades that I don't have. So
No, please, no, that's a practice in your confidence. Like literally,
True.
Give me your long list of accolades. I want to hear them all.
Oh God, no.
Please,
It's like I don't.
no cringing at your accolades. Come on.
Okay.
Say it with your
so
chest.
I am a podcast host, a speaker.
Yes.
I run a business called My Performance Planner.
Yeah.
I run a coaching business. Part of that is I created a planner.
Yeah.
I've done a TED Talk. And that's it, really. It's not that long list, actually. God, now I feel even more embarrassed.
Oh, no, come on. No, genuinely why I wanted Shivani on this podcast is because I genuinely think you're one of those women who are so high achieving. I know social media comes across as very glamorous, highlight reel, all of that. But I really admire and respect you in terms of your business mind and how you set your goals, achieve them, your mindset around success and all of that. And I just think it shows in every area that you work in.
Oh, thank you.
And I do think you're very personal development driven, very focused on your growth. And I think you've had a long life journey, to get to this point. Because the first time I met Shivani was on her podcast, which is an amazing podcast.
I loved that episode.
But also, I was like, she's been doing this for years. And then I said, you were like, no, not that long. Yeah. And I was like, wow, you could have fooled me.
Really?
So take us back. Where did this all start for you? How did you get into all of this? Where did this all begin?
It's a really interesting question, actually, because I remember when Jay Shetty came on my podcast, I asked him the exact same question. And he said, where do you want me to start? The day I did my first podcast or the day I started becoming this person? And I met someone yesterday and they said, have you always been this confident? And I said, since I was a young girl, I remember, and I don't think I've shared this before, but when I was in primary school, I used to do Lambda and I used to love it. And Lambda is
speech and drama.
We used to have to read a page of something and we used to have to essentially recite it. And the more articulate you were, the more you could remember, the more oomph you could give, the better.
Yeah.
And I used to look forward to this class every single week. And I remember I was reading from Anne Frank's diary. And I remember when I was younger, it was just something that I thought, I just enjoy because I'm not sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
I wasn't someone who was very studious in the sense that I didn't love maths and science, but I loved speech and elocution.
Yeah.
I loved drama. I loved all of these things where I was able to be creative and be free. And so I think from a young age, I was always really interested in that. And so I would always ask, can I speak at assembly? And I was head girl in my primary school, so I'd always lead the prayer in the morning.
Yeah.
And I used to enjoy doing things like that.
Yeah.
I never felt scared necessarily. And then I remember when I was in secondary school, I used to ask my headmistress, I found this really inspirational story. Can I read it in assembly to everyone? Wow. And I remember the story I was telling Nikhil the other day. It's quite funny. I was on my period and I just started crying, telling the story. And I was like, I don't know why I'm so emotional. And then he was like, maybe it's your time for starting. It's not that sad, but I'll tell you. It was a story when there was a man who was sitting in hospital and there was another man who came and sat next to him. And he said, he had a curtain in between them, right? And he said, look, I can't see throughout the window. So can you describe what's outside of the window for me? And every day the man would say, a bird's flying today, or there's children walking past, and he would narrate all these stories to him. And unfortunately, that man passed away.
Yeah.
And then when the next man came in through the hospital bed, through the curtain, the man said, excuse me, do you mind telling me what's outside the window?
It was a brick wall.
It was a brick wall. And the man was blind.
Yeah.
And he just used to tell him all these stories. And I remember stories like that from a very young age really touched me. And I used to think, if we can think differently, if not everything we see meets the eye, if we can touch someone in a different way, how powerful would that be?
It's interesting that came about so young for you because it reminded me of the fact that so many people ask me how I do live TV, and I actually don't think it's a very brave thing for me to do because I don't get scared doing it. So for me, it's just easy and effortless. So to try to teach someone else how to be good on live TV is actually not really a skill set I could teach because it's just been natural to me, which makes me want to almost ask you but do you think there's something intrinsic about the fact that like you were the kind of person who wanted to get on stage and didn't feel that, or did you feel that level of intimidation?
It's really interesting. So since I was younger, I've always sang. And when I was younger, I used to sing on stage and everything, but I always felt scared, always really nervous, always shaking. And I did up to grade 8 in singing. And I still to this day will not sing in front of anyone. I find it so embarrassing. I'm so shy. I will literally go bright red. I will start to shake if someone said sing in front of me. I couldn't do it. I have no confidence to do that. When it comes to storytelling, there's something about it that makes me feel a certain way because I know it's making someone else feel a certain way. It's really weird.
It is really weird because I have the same thing. So live TV, I'm good. Live radio, I'm good. Q&As, love it. One of my favorite things to do. Ask me to do a keynote. I am nervous for 3 months. My TED Talk was the most terrifying thing I've ever had to do. For 3 months, I did not sleep. I went to so many hypnotherapists on lead up to it. It is to this day the proudest thing in my life because when I say overcoming the fear, the only real thing I've done in my career where I overcame the fear was my TED Talk.
Wow.
Because that was the only thing where it actually felt hard to do. And there was every single bone in my body wanting to say no, and I didn't say no. I have a rule in my life where I can't say no because I'm scared. And that was, so when people are like, what's your proudest moment? I often think your proudest moment is actually the one where you overcome the fear the most.
So true.
Whereas like people can congratulate me on TV all the time and I'm like, oh, I was giggling away in the green room 10 minutes before. I forgot I had to go on. Like, I often get told, Michelle, you're literally on in 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I forgot. Like, it is just second nature to me. And I think it's twofold, right? So one, find the things that are second nature to you because you don't want to be doing things like the amount of time and energy my TED Talk took. It's not sustainable to do that as my full-time career.
100%.
Also, there are times in your life where like my TED Talk transformed my career. The amount of training I had going into that made me such a better professional speaker. And I know I can and I do it, but I don't do it very often, but I do it. Like that you have to meet this balance of leaning into your strengths, but
100%.
also not being scared of your weaknesses.
It's really interesting. So talking about strength is something that I'm so passionate about because what we've just touched upon is the things that you do when you're younger. And I'd love to know the things that you did when you were younger. But often the things that you did when you were younger that you enjoyed and that you loved are the natural talents that you have. And I don't believe that all of us on this planet have the same talent.
Yeah.
We all have different talents. There are going to be things, like you said, I don't know how I would feel about going on live TV and just be chilling. I don't know how I'd feel like that. But my TED Talk, I only wrote it a week before.
That's mad to me.
I was nervous on the day, but when you're saying like you didn't sleep for 3 months, like I just didn't.
Oh, I had like cold sweats.
Which is so interesting, right? Like but like live TV, I've never done it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would be so relaxed how you are. But it's interesting how we have these natural talents. But the problem now is that everyone's saying, I can teach you how to be anything. And I can teach you, like you said, I think it's really honest and open of you to say, I don't think I can teach you that. It's something that I have.
Same with social media. All these social media experts.
I'm done with it.
Because also I was like, how I grew my following. You know how
it's very different.
But also how I grew my following was Instagram at the time had this thing called Top 9. On hashtags.
Okay.
So I just utilized hashtags really well and got in the top 9. This doesn't exist anymore. So like I probably grew about 150,000 followers just by utilizing that one thing that no longer exists. If I did that at a different time, I would have a different following. If people weren't talking about body positivity when I went viral for it, I wouldn't have gone viral for it. Like, you can't reverse engineer someone's career.
So true.
It used to annoy me in school when people, so we had these nightly, every Friday night at 9 o'clock, we had to listen to a lecture in school, like real way to like the boarding school to keep you inside and not have fun. And it would be like,
that sounds like my idea of heaven right now. I'm like, wow, I might do that.
Oh my God, not when you're
in school though. No, the worst.
But the most frustrating thing is these people would get on stage and they'd be like, I just fell into it. Don't know how I got here. And like, it used to be so frustrating sitting there for an hour, basically people not being able to give you strategy or understand it. But then realistically, 10 years into my career now, kind of everything I do is because I fell into it, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
But there is an element of leaning into the strengths you have. So when you say, what were the natural skills I had when I was younger? If I look at any report, it said talks too much.
Yes, me too.
Too opinionated, doesn't listen. I don't have to listen
See
to
why
any...
we both have a podcast.
But this is what I mean.
So true.
These are all my strengths in my career.
Right.
Like, I could not... Doesn't listen. Clearly, I should have taken from a very young age, is not going to work well having a boss.
Yeah.
If we were able to transform our report cards in that same way of like too bossy, always in... Like, too bossy, great, she needs to be in charge. Doesn't listen, great, she can't have a boss.
Yeah.
Could we translate it that way? Even something as simple as, she doesn't listen. Why did no one, when I was applying for university, then sit me down and go, hey, you wanting to be a psychologist isn't going to work very well because you don't listen. It only occurred to me in my first life coaching session that I was like, fuck, I'm really bad at listening. Why did no one tell me this? Everyone in my life knows I'm bad at listening, but no one thought to tell me, you do realize in a life coaching session, in a psychologist session, you spend more time listening than you do talking. And it's such common sense, but no one connected those dots. And my first year of being a life coach, I was like, fuck, I'm really struggling to listen. Like, I don't enjoy it.
This is the thing, is that we're told that these things when we're younger are bad things.
Yeah.
And I often talk about this, and when I talk around strengths is when someone sees me speaking on stage, they're like, wow, you're such a good speaker and you're so inspiring, you're so charismatic.
Yeah.
In an argument with me, I'm still that same person who's charismatic and talks a lot and will shout sometimes and will be expressive in the way I'm expressing right now. And unless you understand that your strengths, unless you work on them and tame them and create them in a certain way, they will become your weaknesses in certain situations.
I think this is also important in personal relationships,
Yes.
of like romantic relationships and friendships. The thing you hate about a person is likely also what you love about the person as well.
100%.
And you can't pick and choose.
You can't.
Yeah.
Like people will say sometimes like, you're like so confident when you speak. And I'm like, you look at me in that way. But when we've had a disagreement, you've said something so differently.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to look at someone's strength and think, oh my God, that's something that, you know, that they've worked on, but a lot of the time it's something that they have.
Yeah.
And because it's something that's so authentic that you have, you cannot change it depending on each scenario. But if you're aware of it, you can learn to adjust it and understand it. So now when I get into, when something's contentious, I just say, by the way, I'm a very expressive person. You know that I'm really expressive, that I like to be animated with my emotions. So just know that before we get into this, that I'm not attacking you.
Yeah. I say, can I be honest? I'm warning you. I'm about to just hand it out.
No, but I think it's really important. And I think what you said as well in terms of going back and seeing what people criticized you for, how can you transform that into something that you can actually see in a positive light? How can you understand why you were those things? Why didn't you listen? Instead of saying she never listens, but what was it that you weren't listening to?
I think also we have a culture where we pay attention to our weaknesses much more so
100%.
than... I'm not saying ignore your weaknesses, but I think this is why also social media doesn't help, because the only topics I talk about are actually quite niche. I only ever talk about psychology, self-development, and personal growth. And so I sound so smart online and so eloquent online, and I am very smart in those areas.
Yes.
But ask me about geography, you'll suddenly realize I'm a complex whole human being.
So
like,
true.
and I just think sometimes my whole comment section is always filled with, you're so wise, you're so wise. I'm not saying I'm not. I'm saying I'm very smart in one area of life, and I've just leaned into my strength.
Yes.
And if only everyone could do that too, they would have much more solid self-esteem. And it's not the fact that I ignore my weaknesses.
Right.
Like, I'm always trying to improve on it.
Because you're not so passionate and so interested in that.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I think when you're thinking about something, if anybody's watching or listening to this right now and they're thinking, how do I tap into my strengths? The first thing you've got to understand is, what are you interested in? What do you enjoy? Go back to when you were younger and think about what it is that you liked. I really loved drama and slamder and all of these things because I wasn't in a classroom sitting down, huddled over. So right now I don't go and work in an office. Because when I go into an office, I feel like I'm back in that suffocated environment. I like to walk and then think about an idea. This morning, it was so funny. I have this thing. So a lot of people do morning pages.
Yeah.
I do.
It didn't work for me.
I do a morning self-therapy session with myself.
Oh, wow.
So I go for a walk and I pretend that I'm in a therapy chair. Because we all have the answers. You have the answers for your friends. You have the answers for everyone else in your life that comes to you with a problem. You have the answer. Yeah. And so I went for a walk this morning, and it was so funny because I was obviously just so passionate the way I was speaking. But I had a matcha in my hand. And when I had the matcha, had an AirPod, but I was obviously pretending to talk with the mattress so I didn't look like a right weirdo. And the mattress was like spilling over my jacket. And someone was like, excuse me. And I was like, yeah, hello. I was like, 1 second. So I had to pretend because obviously I wasn't talking to anyone. And there was match all over my jacket. And I was like, these therapy sessions, they're going to bloody kill me because I'm so passionate when I'm talking to myself.
How does that practically work?
What do you mean?
If someone wants to put that into their life, do you imagine talking to another? Do you visualize another person?
No. So I basically go for a walk. And I say, okay, so why have you come in today? And I'm like, well, I'm feeling a bit anxious this morning. Why are you feeling anxious this morning? I don't know. This situation happened yesterday and it's brought up a lot of feelings to me. Okay, so tell me about those feelings. I literally just ask myself.
You do the two voices?
I do both voices. I ask myself the questions, but I speak out loud from my part, which is why I have to pretend I'm on the phone because otherwise people in the street think I'm a weirdo, right?
Wow, you know what? It works for you.
I would always recommend people to go for a walk and pretend that they're going into a therapy office or calling a friend and saying, hey, this is how I feel. And it's really important. So much of the time, we're scared of the judgment.
Yeah.
We're scared to tell our therapist how we really feel. If we've got a dark thought or a negative thought, we don't even want to tell them. So when it comes to a friend or a loved one or a family member, we're so resistant.
Yeah.
So when you have a conversation with yourself, it's just you.
Yeah.
And you're out in the open.
If you feel that resistance in a therapy session, what I find is that's helpful is I just go, I'm just going to spit it out. And I like close my eyes and say it. I say it out in a rush and like, at least it's out there so it can be addressed. Because I do think if you are paying for therapy and then not being honest,
100%.
like it's no point. So if you are someone who, for example, I came out of university really confused. I had no answers. I wanted to be a psychologist for 10 years of my life, graduated, suddenly didn't want to be a psychologist anymore.
Right.
How do you start to figure out where to go?
Yeah.
And especially because you're so passionate about goal setting, how do you even set goals when you have no clue which direction?
This is the thing. So I think when I came out of university, I studied law and sociology and I absolutely hated it. I was like, I'm never going to do this ever again. And I fell into what I think everyone falls into, which is what is safe and what should I do? But I was actually in a position where I was like, what can I do?
Yeah.
I always found myself, whether it was in school or university, never being in that privileged position of being able to choose. You know, I did so badly in my GCSEs. I just got told the A-levels I was going to do. I didn't get to choose them. When I did okay in my A-levels, but I remember at the time, everyone was like, pure law is better than doing law with something.
Yeah.
But because I didn't get 3 A's, I couldn't do pure law. So I had to do law with sociology, which now seems bizarre to me because I'm like, I'm so happy I did the sociology part because it gave me such a different angle and I learned so much from both different.
Oh, don't even get me started. The fact that there are like higher, like more valued by society degrees and like lower degrees.
But at the time, I just remember thinking, I've just had to get in life. I was always had this mentality of get what you're given. I never thought that I was good enough to choose.
Yeah.
So when I came out of university, I remember I applied for maybe 3 jobs. Honestly, I was I was very lazy. I was very different to what I am now. I remember I applied to Unilever and they said no. And I applied to a marketing job. I can't even do the marketing now. I don't understand why I applied to a marketing job. I think someone was just like, you should do it. I was like, okay, cool. Or HR. Honestly, my dad was like, do HR because HR is easy and you'll make decent money. I would have been the worst HR person. So I applied to marketing, applied to HR. And then at Eon, there was like a graduate scheme. You rotated around 4 places. Anyway, I got that. But it was the funniest thing when I got that because I had to go to Nottingham for this job interview. And the day before, they were like, you get to stay in this hotel. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I love that. We had dinner. And I remember at the dinner, I said, so where is the office in London? And they were like, there is no office in London. And I was like, okay, then. I went upstairs. I took a bath. I did not prep for this interview. I literally just took a bath. And I was like, I'm not moving to Nottingham. So what's the point? I'm here now, but I'm not doing anything. I remember.
It's interesting you didn't know that before you got
I had no
there,
idea.
though.
I was like, this is the thing. When you live in London and you've lived in London your whole life, you think everything is in London. Like you can't think that there's a job that's outside of London. Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time, this is so weird. Right? And everyone's it's not because there are jobs outside. And I was like, oh yeah,
there's
okay.
a whole country.
There's a whole like nation.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the point is because I wasn't stressed out
Yeah.
about I must get this and there was so much pressure, I got the job. Now, at the time, I didn't have another option because I didn't bother applying anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I just, again, was like, I'll just take this job. Now, when I was in this job, something really interesting happened because I was going through a breakup when I was on the 3rd placement. And the 3rd placement was all around operational excellence, which was talking about lean management and talking about how we optimize the business in terms of coaching people and understanding the way that they work and how we can help them. And there was something that I really found so interesting with this, right? And I started to read a lot of books at this time because they would give examples of Stephen Covey. And I remember once we were in a lecture almost, and he was like, these are the things you can control and these are the things that you can't. And because I was just coming out or wanting to break up from this relationship, I started applying my relationship to this work and thinking, couldn't that work for this situation? And I remember it gave me the strength to leave.
Wow.
And I remember these books, and this was the time where Jay Shetty was starting his podcast, and I knew Jay and Radhi from when I was in school. So I was so interested in all of this stuff that was like coming up at the time. Self-development wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
We're not taught about it in school.
Yeah.
I think now we have so much access to podcasts and motivational videos and all of these things where people are talking around things in songs.
Yeah.
The songs back then weren't motivational.
No.
And so I just gravitated towards this.
It's funny because I say you can't reverse engineer it, but like actually looking back, you can.
Yeah.
Because your detachment to whether you got that job or not is something I talk a lot about around goal setting.
Really?
Of set the goal and let it free. And if
Right.
you don't let it free and you're like, for people watching on audio, you can't see this, but essentially, if you are clinging onto a goal like a closed fist,
Right.
you're like unlikely to get it because you're so desperate. You're like, I need this. My life isn't going to be okay without it.
100%.
But if you are able to be like, I want this, and then for those who are just listening on audio, let it go, loosen your fist, let it relax, and be like, I've set the goal. The analogy I use is like when you order something online.
Right.
You know it's going to come. You don't keep opening the door every day, like checking that it's arriving.
True.
You set the goal. You don't know how it's going to happen,
Yes.
but it's going to happen somehow. The detachment from the goal actually helps it come true. But if you are the kind of person who's like checking if your parcel's arrived every 2 seconds, you have to look at like, why are you so desperate for it?
Right.
What is it that you believe achieving this goal is going to fix? And can you fix that in your life in other ways? Because then it opens your mind a bit more.
It's really interesting. This is the difference between outcome-based goals and process-based goals. So an outcome-based goal would be to say, I want to write a #1 bestseller.
Yeah.
The process-based goal is, what are the things that I need to do to get there? So I agree with you. With the outcome-based goal, you've got to let it go.
Yeah.
But the process-based goals are all the steps that you want to get there. Now, this is why it's so important to set both. When I started my podcast, and I'll go into that story now, actually. But when I started the podcast, I never had an intention of this is going to be my full-time job. It was not possible to me.
Yeah.
I literally saw somebody recording a podcast in a room with no windows and no production crew and just a mic. And I thought, hold on, if you can do that, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I thought, let me just start it as like a side thing. It was in COVID. Who didn't have a side hustle in COVID? Like, we had so much time.
Yeah.
So when people now, I think, are starting podcasts, it's so strategic and it's so clever and everyone's trying to get these viral hits. And it's just, it drives me mad, actually, when I see how much time people spend on like the aesthetics and like making everything's perfect. But the conversation is like reading off a key card and you're like,
That's the most frustrating thing when you're the guest on that podcast as well. Someone,
Drives me mad.
I'm not going to say who, but I once did a
me
podcast
after.
where they paused it every 10 minutes. Like, they would ask me a question, pause after the answer, and then would look through their notes before asking the next question. I was like, it was the worst podcast I'd given because I was like,
there's no flow.
I don't know how to have this conversation. And it's funny because I think it's a lack of trusting in their skill and ability.
Yes.
But I agree with you that I feel like there, especially with the bestseller thing, I have always had the goal to have a bestseller with every single one of my books. I've never actually achieved it. Everything I do to lead up to that point, I would still do the same thing over again, whether I achieve it or not.
Yeah.
And it means that when the book comes out, regardless of whether I get a bestseller, I have no regrets because I've put it all out there.
Exactly.
I've usually lost my voice by that point. I'm completely exhausted. But I know that I'm not going to live with any ifs and buts. And that's why almost the process of goal setting is less about the achievement of the goal, or at least in my life it is.
Yeah.
It's about the attitude I bring to it. And when I'm writing my books every day before I sit down, so my when you're talking about process, my process is every day I write 2,000 words when I'm on a deadline. And like, it's no matter what, even if it takes me till midnight, some days it takes me till 10 o'clock in the morning and then I'm done and I'm good for the day. But before I sit down and before I write anything or type anything on my page, I go, how would I feel right now if I knew I was writing a bestseller? And so it's in every part of the process. It's not just, in a sense, I know this sounds counterintuitive, when I say set the goal and let it go, it's that. And then also the energy of that, keep that around.
No, I think what you just described is right, because there is a difference. An outcome-based goal, like I said, like for example, would be, I want to grow to 1 million followers, let's just say. The process is what you need to work on every single day to get there. Now, regardless of whether you hit that goal or not, you've hit your process-based goal because you're posting every day.
Yeah.
You're trying new content. That's the thing that I think people confuse is I never set an outcome-based goal for my podcast. I never ever said that. All I said was, I just want to make it better. I just want to make sure that every single day I'm posting one thing on Instagram, one thing on YouTube, and now one thing on TikTok.
Yeah.
I always just said that's the one thing that I need to do today. What that leads me, it could get me 1 million, it could get me 10 million. I don't know and I don't care. And I think as you get older and as I've got older, I feel like I've refined that a lot more.
Yeah.
When I started, I didn't really know what I was doing. But I think as I've got older, I've come up with a really good way in which you understand how you're actually going to hit a goal. Because so many of us just think it's like wishing and dreaming and they confuse it with manifesting, and it's totally different.
Wait, say more about that.
Okay, so I have a 4-step formula that will promise you that you will hit your goal, okay? The first step is visualize. So where do you want to go? If you don't know what you want, you cannot achieve it.
Yeah.
If someone gives you a birthday wish, you don't say, I don't know what I'm going to wish for. You wish for something. So when you're setting your goals, it's the same thing. What is it that you want? Be very specific about what it is that you want. The second step, which is a step everyone always misses out, what has stopped you from getting there and what will stop you from getting there? Your habits, your distractions, money, resource, whatever those things are.
So connecting those two things, I would also say, if you visualize it and you feel it in your body, and what you're feeling in your body is fear, that is going to stop it from. So if you're like, I've always said I wanted a talk show. So if I'm visualizing me having a talk show and actually what I'm feeling in my body is terrified, I have to go into that emotion
100%
and resolve that emotion because that goal will never happen.
Exactly, because you're so afraid of it even when you're thinking about it. Yeah. So when you're in it, but also what's really important here, if you're so scared when you're thinking about it, why is it that you're scared actually? Question to you.
That's a hypothetical. I've worked through all of that stuff. But for example, the fear.
For sure.
The fear.
I was like, you love live TV. Why would you be scared of a talk show?
Oh, I'm not scared. I'm waiting for it to drop in my lap. But what I mean is there are absolutely some goals where if you told me I had 1 million followers tomorrow, that probably would give me fear because I think it would change the way I would post. I think being exposed to that level of audience, I enjoy the level I'm at.
Exactly.
And I think you have to go into
100%. So there we go. So you've imagined it and you're not enjoying it, which means you will not enjoy it when you have it.
But I also think we live in a world where we always think we want more and better 100%. And know that about myself. I actually quite like the following I have now.
But that's amazing because you've already, this is why the visualization is so important, is if you didn't visualize yourself in that moment, having 1 million followers and feeling that fear or feeling whatever it is, you would then not know that in this moment right now, you're happier. Yeah. Because you would always think I should have more because that's going to give me X, Y, and Z. Yeah. But you visualize it, you've been there and you're like, that doesn't work for me. So now you're actually in a really amazing place. You're like, that's not the right goal for me. Yeah. We do not visualize where we want to go. And there's a whole process, by the way. I'm like really summarizing it here. But we don't visualize where we want to go. And therefore we don't know how we're going to feel. And therefore we don't know if that goal is right for us or not.
So once you've visualized it,
and you know that it's right for you or wrong for you. If it's wrong for you, think about another goal, visualize another thing that you want.
And then the second thing is...
identify what's stopping you from getting there. What your limitations are, what your blockers, things that are stopping you from getting to that place that you visualized.
And then the third step.
What do you think it would be?
Take action.
How are you going to overcome those blockers? So I will know where I want to go. I know what's stopping me. Yeah. How am I going to get over that? What are all the things that I'm going to do? Yeah. And then the last one is actually setting the goal, which is when and where and how am I going to do it?
Specifics.
The scheduling, yes. So if people are sitting at home right now, right, and they think, okay, I want to have a new goal next week and it's to go to the gym, be healthier, whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, cool, how are you going to do that? They're like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. And I'm like, great, what's stopping you from going to the gym? My gym's an hour away. Are you going to move?
Yeah.
Or are you going to get a gym closer to you? Because if the reason you're not going to the gym is because it's an hour away, whether you schedule it and put your time in and motivate yourself and listen to Mel Robbins every day and have your gym clothes on your bed and put your water by your thing, it's not going to change.
See, it's so interesting.
If you don't identify what has been stopping you, how are you going to overcome that?
The first question I want to ask as a life coach, if someone sat down in front of me, was like, okay, and what happens the week that you go twice a week? Because I think that's where we create goals sometimes as an all or nothing thing.
But that's the thing, outcome and process.
And actually, if you talk to most people and they're like, I'd be disappointed in myself and then I probably wouldn't want to go the following week. I'm like, great, so it's not the right goal.
Exactly.
Like,
3 times is too much for you.
You need to have the mentality around that of anything is better than nothing.
Yes.
And because you need to have an element of flexibility around your goals. And this is why this whole idea of New Year's resolution just leads to failure all the time, because it's so high, it's so unrealistic. And there will be a week where you are ill, flat out in bed. Healthier thing for you is to not go to the gym. Yes. And if you push through, first of all, your illness would last longer. And second of all, you've got this all or nothing mentality around goal setting that now it automatically, you being ill means you're seeing yourself as a failure rather than like being flexible and adjusting.
So true. What you've just mentioned there as well is first understanding where are you now and then where do you want to go? Yeah. So when you visualize, that's what we do as well. So if you're going to the gym, like you're never going to the gym, let's just say, and then you say, I want to go 3 times a week. It's a big change. Yeah. So you got to start with once.
You know, my first goal. So I've been working out regularly since I was 19. My first goal was to walk to the gym 3 times a week. I didn't have to stay. That's all I had to do. Amazing. And the number of times I would go, walk through the turnstile, come straight back out. There was one day I went to the gym with 1 shoe. And literally, I knew I didn't have both shoes in the bag. And I still had to go. The thing is, it sounds like the most ridiculous thing. My friend who walked with me to the gym was like, why do you bother coming all the way with 1 trainer? Like, you knew you weren't going to stay. I was like, I've just walked 20 minutes to get here. I'm going to walk 20 minutes home. Yeah. That is 40 minutes, 3 times a week. And I've built a habit. And this is all I care about. And I genuinely think if I hadn't, and I think some days I took some joy out of going, I didn't even bring my sports bra today. I'm not staying. But it was the fact that I built that habit that like more than 12 years on now. Yes. I still have that habit in place. Exactly. Because I took the hurdle. The biggest hurdle was getting to the gym. It was not just a 20-minute walk. It was a 20-minute uphill walk. Yeah. So I really never wanted to go to the gym. And taking the hurdle of getting to the gym out, that was all the goal had to be. It was like, just get to the gym.
And sometimes I think it's about creating something that's more manageable for you. Yeah. So this is the other thing. When I do my workshops, people like to look around sometimes and they compare their goals. And I'm like, your goals are different from my goals. My capacity is different from your capacity. Yeah. I saw this picture once and it said, we look at everyone and we think they're all the same. Like how you look at a plate, right? But I don't compare a plastic plate to a paper plate. Yeah. To a glass plate. Yeah. To another kind of plate. You know what I mean? They're all different. They all hold different things. But a plate is a plate.
But also, I think one of the positives around a goal like that is like the foot in the door thing. Yes. Yes, there were days I didn't bring my trainers or I didn't bring like my sports bra. But ultimately, once I was there, it was so much easier to just stay for 5 minutes.
Exactly. And then you're just like, I'm here now. Maybe I'll just do a 10-minute workout, or my friend's here with me, so maybe I'll walk on the treadmill with her or whatever.
Yeah, and then you'll be like, the number of days I'd be like, I'll just walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes. Yeah. Then 5 minutes would hit and a good song will come on. And then suddenly I'm like, and then I'll see my friend across in the weights room and I'll suddenly go to the weights. It was just having the habit that then everything was a bonus that actually created, is that one of the first goals of my life I think I set, where it had there was no downside to it. There was no sense of shame. There was no sense of failure. And I think it was only because I'd come out of hospital that like I was learning how to walk again. Like I really was starting from scratch. But I think most times you're not starting from that low. And so we almost use our goals as a way to shame ourselves. And I think now that the conversation of personal development and self-growth and all of these things are so common, it's this idea of constantly evolving that can actually be a little bit exhausting. Have 100%. You found that?
I think that this idea of you constantly have to be doing something to be better is so draining. Yeah. And this is where I think that your strengths are so important, right? if you're constantly doing something better, that's your strength and something that you enjoy and something that you're good at and something that you love, it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Yeah.
For me, I feel, especially with, like I said, when I started the podcast, it wasn't something that I was like, I have this amazing business idea. I did fall into it. Going back, there is a method though. And I could tell you, we could be here for hours and I could tell you what I did to get to where I did, because I do think that the tools are applicable. The way that it happened is not. I grew online because somebody posted a video about me on TikTok and they just took it from my page. They didn't tag me. And the video hit 1 million in a day and then 3 million in 3 days. And everyone was like, who is this person? And I grew from 17K on Instagram to 65 in a week because this one video on TikTok went viral.
You.
They didn't credit me. I went back into the comments and wrote my name on every single person who asked who I was. Every single person.
Wow.
And my TikTok at the time was like nothing. So my Instagram was where people had to follow me because my TikTok didn't have any content really.
Yeah.
And so very different time. Wouldn't apply today.
Yeah.
Because I was just speaking my mind.
Yeah.
And there wasn't this like huge cancel culture as much as it is now. I was just talking what I wanted.
Yeah, that's how I got this podcast, right?
Really?
So I ran my own podcast for 2 years. I went on someone else's podcast, Kiara King, amazing podcast. And that's my team now because the camera went down and I gave Kiara some really honest advice. And the producer sat behind and was like, we need her to have a podcast. Really? And I was speaking my mind. I knew the camera was on me, but also I was just speaking my mind. And they were like, she needs a podcast. So I was like, oh, I already have one. Not had it for 2 years. Yeah, because it's too tiring.
Yeah, it is tiring.
I do think it is that thing of you need to pay attention when things happen.
Yes.
And so it is this weird combination of falling into things. Yeah. But for example, I got offered a book deal, them not knowing I had already written a book, for example. Wow. I ended up saying no to it because they didn't want the book I wanted. But it was the fact that I was always pushing, trying to find an agent, trying to find, I was in those spaces, I was having those conversations. And how I got that book offer was because I had sent an email to a YouTuber I really respect, Hannah Witten, being like, hey, I would love to meet you. Happened to mention the fact that, I've got this book that I've been trying to pitch out, it's not going very well, it's been a few years, blah, blah, blah. She then, a few months later, gets a book deal. She wants me to be a contributor in her book. It's her publisher who then wants me to write a book.
Wow.
And then when the publisher reaches out, I'm like, oh, I already have a book and I have an agent. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
It's so much. And it's even stuff I remember when I wasn't enjoying being a life coach, that I was like, I love the content. Frankly, I'm not very good at listening. I don't want to spend my whole day listening. But also I hated being on Skype all day. The practical day-to-day of being a life coach was not working for me. And then I looked at my career and I went, okay, which parts do I like? And I wrote a silly little blog for my website. And I went, but I really like the writing part. And then I was like, wait, let's dig up that book that I wrote ages ago and actually work on that, because I clearly like writing.
Yes. And what energizes you? That's the other thing. Does writing energize you?
Yeah. And also it's easy. I often say my favorite part of my career is the 8 months when no one contacts me between me getting the book deal and I have to actually send it to someone. I want no one to talk to me. The 2,000 words a day is my most peaceful moment of the day. It's why I'm on my 5th book, because I never want to not be writing. I genuinely love it. But it all came from me looking at my career going, okay, so I don't love being on Skype. I love what I'm talking about. I love when I get to talk. Yes. So I need to be doing more public speaking. I like writing my blog, so I want to be doing more writing. And I was running a silly little Instagram page with 1,000 followers. And I was like, but I love interacting with my community on there. So it wasn't I'm going to become an influencer. It was I'm going to post on my social media more.
Why?
I want to write a little bit more. I'm going to see if I can get some more public speaking.
Yeah.
And then it just a little bit. And then there was a day where I was like, I don't have time to have sessions anymore with clients. I need to focus on my writing. I need to focus on my speaking. And all of those things built. But it's this funny thing of, did I fall into it, or was I just putting out more of what I wanted and trying to, in terms of the hours in my day, just trying to make sure there were more hours in my day doing what I liked than what I didn't.
Exactly. And I think the point before that you mentioned about, do you always feel like you have to do more and more? I think if you are somebody who wants to do more constantly, you are going to feel drained, especially if you're doing more of the things that you don't love. And the energy point is really important. Last week, I actually was speaking at NSPCC and I was hosting a panel event. And that morning I was so tired, exhausted. I slept with my mouth open all the way in the car there. And I got there and I was like, I'm so tired. I sat down and just suddenly I had this wave of energy because I was speaking on this panel, something that I was so passionate about. And when I left, I felt so energized. And I said that it's so interesting that some people would feel so nervous to do a panel talk. For me, it actually wakes me up. Makes me feel so energetic.
I need you to come back to talk about this, but we end every episode talking about something we're working on or learning, like personally. Is there something you are working on and learning?
There is. I think that, to be really honest, when I started, I felt that I was focused so much on the podcast, and that is why it grew.
Yeah.
But I'm somebody who has gone into so many different directions. There's 7 different parts of the business now. And I think something that I'm learning to do now is not to multitask so much, right? To just focus on one thing instead of just trying to be this person who does one thing for 2 hours in the morning and then switches to another thing and then does another thing and another thing. I'm just like honing into one thing, and I'm trying to focus on a single task a day now.
So you're both trying to diversify your career, but in a very
different
focused way.
Different way. Nikhil, my partner, he'll be like, "What's your one focus for today?" And I'm like, "What a stupid question! I have 9 focuses for the day." And he doesn't work like that. And I'm like, "What's your one focus?" And he's so clear in what he needs to do for the day. And I'm like, I maybe I should adopt that because he's so successful.
So
and I'm like, "How are you doing it?" And he's like, "I just do one thing a day." And I'm like, "It's weird, but."
It's how I operate my life.
Really?
Because I have so many hats, my book lever is like completely down right now because there's no chance I can write right now. I wouldn't be focused. I don't have the time in the day. I don't have the hours in the day.
Wow.
Like my podcast is quite consistent. I come in once a month, but right now I'm in heavy book promotion mode. I don't have a lot of time to give for social media. My social media content is just not going to be the best it's going to be right now. Like once the book is out, I will be able to, like, if you raise one lever, you have to lower another
100%.
one. And then day to day, like today is a podcast day. I'm not going to be thinking about social media. I'm not going to be thinking about books. I'm not going to. And tomorrow is probably about books because it's always about books at the moment. But like, that's how I do it. Because everyone's like, how do you do it all? And I do it all because I can't be thinking about everything else I need to be doing while I'm doing it.
Mine is the opposite, which is why I think I feel so tired. Because everyone's like, people always like, how do you have so much energy? I'm like, I'm just always tired. And then I'm like, is there something wrong with me? And I'm like, maybe I think it's just, I'm like, in the morning, okay, this is social media. This is now brainstorming. This is now a podcast. This is now something else. This is now coaching. This is now community. It's just that every hour is different.
There's so much research that shows that like the biggest time waste is switching.
Agree.
Like, yeah. And so I think that's why
I'm so tired.
Yeah. And also I think if you said to the average person how much you do in a day, you would realize that like you're tired.
I know. Reason. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what supplements should I take? And I'm like, taking all these supplements. I'm still so tired. And I'm like, okay, that's something I'm learning how to do, is to focus on one thing a day.
Yeah.
And to not allow every day to be like a mix of multitasking 20,000 things at the same time.
So the thing I am working on at the moment is I've had an infuriating week, and I can't talk about any of it because I've signed NDAs, but I've had an infuriating week and I'm currently processing a lot of rage in my body. But I'm trying to, anger is the only negative emotion that gives you energy. And I'm trying to use it to channel it into creative methods.
Nice.
I texted my PT earlier and was like, I'm going to need slam balls.
Nice.
So I am processing it and working through it.
Amazing.
And I will come to the end of it. But
amazing.
Yeah, it's a rage-filled week, which I have actually probably not experienced this level of anger in
really
3-4 years. And it's uncomfortable in my body. Like it's to hold that much anger. But I'm very looking forward to slamming a slam ball later.
So self-aware.
I need to go to a boxing class.
Yeah, boxing is great. Boxing is excellent.
It's so good. If you can visualize the emotion you are feeling and channel it, like it's not just about going to a boxing class, but actually tapping into that energy. I'm so looking forward to it later. Anyway, that's not the point. Time. The point is, how can everyone find you? And you have an amazing goal-setting workshop as well.
Yes. So my handles are all Shivani Pau. My surname is spelled P-A-U, which people get confused all the time. So on any platform, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. And then I'm hosting a goal-setting workshop in April. I do this every January, actually. but this is going to be online. And it's a time, spring is a time for renewal, right? We're connecting to nature. The days are longer.
Yeah.
People are happier. The serotonin is shining in. And so I think it's such a great way to set your goals. And for lots of people who missed it in January, I'm doing it online now.
That's amazing. And you'll run through all of the 4 steps to goal
in detail.
setting.
Exactly. Give you exercises, give you a workbook to go along with. There's going to be loads of different practical tools that you can use immediately and ones that you need to work on as well. And of course, I have my planner as well if you want to get that alongside it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Loved having you.
Thank you. We could have talked for hours, honestly. I don't know where the time has gone.
This episode will never end. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back next Tuesday with a brand new episode.